back. This is a Galaxy S20 Plus restoration video that I shot about a week ago, and it took me almost a week to get to this point with the editing process. This is by far the most ambitious project I've ever done with my editing. I've pretty much taken everything that I've learned up to this point over the past 9 months or so since I started this YouTube adventure, and used all the tricks that I know to try to get this video as top-notch quality as I possibly could. Now let's get to the topic at hand. This Galaxy S20 Plus came in needing restoration for the customer. Both the front and the back were very badly damaged, and the customer needed this phone for work and couldn't use it at all. After heating up the back glass for about 5 minutes on a hot plate, we used isopropyl alcohol and a flat X-Acto knife blade to kind of cut that glue away from the back glass. And then we're met with a plethora of Phillips head screws. Now, all of these screws are the same size, so you don't have to worry about putting them in any kind of pattern. You can just kind of put them in a little neat pile. You want to make sure that you don't lose any of the screws, because I don't know where you could buy replacement screws. My parts distributor, I don't believe, carries replacement screws for Samsung devices, so you want to make sure that you keep up with your screws. But they're all the same size, so just put them down in a nice, neat little pile. A magnetic mat works great, or you just put them on some tape or something to keep your screws from rolling around on your desk in case it gets bumped. And you don't want to be the person that bumps your desk while you're working and loses screws, because that's happened to me in the past. I don't know exactly how many of these Phillips screws there were, but these Samsung devices really go overboard with the screws. I think you could probably use about half of the screws that this phone has and be just fine, but there's tons and tons of these screws. And now we're going to move down to the bottom. This assembly here is for your loudspeaker, and it has some antenna bands on it. And once you get all of these screws out, it will also expose the charge port for your S20 Plus. So you want to make sure that you remove this plate here first, and then you can transfer your charge port over to your new screen assembly. Now this wireless charging coil module is kind of taped down to the bottom, so you want to go ahead and peel that tape up and disconnect the cable that connects your wireless charging coil from to your board. Once you pop this up, I use a nylon spudger to get up underneath it and pop it away. That top plastic frame comes up as well. Unplug it and just pull it away from the phone, and then the next thing you want to do is pull your SIM card tray out. I recommend doing this as the very first step. Before you do anything else, pull your SIM card tray out. It is easy to forget it, and you can damage the board as you start to try to pry the board out. The next step is to disconnect the battery before you start messing with all the flex cables. There are several of these flex cables that do need to be disconnected. Some of them pry away from the frame, and some of them stay with the frame. You want to make sure that you know which cable goes where. I recommend taking pictures so that you can reference them later if you have any problems putting the cable where it goes. A lot of times you can pretty much tell where it's going to go, but if you have any problems, you can have references later on. You're going to pop this loudspeaker attachment off, and then that will expose the charge port. There are 2 more flex cables down here at the bottom that you need to disconnect and pull away from the phone, and then there are 3 more Phillips head screws. Once you do pull that charge port out, you also want to remove the vibrate motor, which we'll show you in a second. We've got 2 screws on either side of the charge port, and 1 right above the microphone holding the charge port down into place. There's some slight adhesive on the back side of this charge port, so you do have to pry it up slowly and peel it away. It's relatively easy. It's more geared to keep water out of the inside of the phone. It's not a hard process. Now you can use heat and or 99% isopropyl alcohol to get this vibrate motor up. I do recommend using something, because it doesn't just come up on its own. It is glued down. You just peel that up and out of the way, and then you can transfer it to your new screen later. The next thing we have to do on these S20 Pluses is remove some more screws that hold down the board and the 5G modems. You want to make sure that those are peeled away as well, and your front camera. Once you get these cables disconnected and these last couple of screws out, the board comes out, and as you see there, the board is quite different than it was in years past. One thing I noticed is that this front camera is actually glued down with thick glue. You have to be really careful in using a flat blade or something to pry that camera out, and I have experienced a broken front camera and had to replace that camera. Luckily for this particular repair, I was able to get it out without breaking it, but I've never seen Samsung use so much glue on a front camera until this generation. In the past, it was just a flex cable and it pops out. For some reason, they decided to start gluing the cameras in place. Next step in the process is to remove the 5G antennas. There are 2 screws on the left to remove this antenna here. There's also an antenna on the right side of the phone as well. We're going to remove the left one here and remove it from the first frame and put it into the replacement frame. It's easier just to go ahead and snap it into place here first before you go any further. Put your 2 Phillips screws back into place. And now we can put the vibrate motor back into place on the new frame. Once we get the vibrate motor in place, we can wedge the charge port in there. It's easiest just to put the charge port part in down first, snap it into place, and then replace your 3 Phillips head screws. And that's pretty much it for the charge port. You want to put your anchor screw down there for the board, and now we can turn our attention to the battery. Now, I hate removing Samsung batteries. As a matter of fact, usually when I do a repair, if I have to order parts, I'll go ahead and order a battery. It's $10 for the battery. You're already spending over $200 for the screen. Might as well go ahead and order a replacement battery just in case, because they use so much glue that a lot of times, even with heat and alcohol, you end up having to pry the battery out. Luckily, in this particular case, I was able to get that battery out with no issues. Now we can start reattaching our flex cable. This cable here is for the buttons. You got the cable here that connects between the charge port and the board. Snap those in place. Another cable that goes from the charge port to the board. Snap that one in place. And now we can put our loudspeaker back in place and replace the Phillips screws that go down to the loudspeaker. There are 5 Phillips head screws down here. We can put those all in place. And that's complete. Now we can reconnect the battery and this other flex cable here to the 5G antenna. And we can re-adhere our wireless charging coil. We start with the connection first. It's just easier that way. Once the connection is in place, we can fold the top plastics up into its location and snap it all in place, get all the little crunches that come with it, and then we can we can start putting all this plethora of Phillips head screws back into the board to hold everything back in place. There are so many screws to put back in this S20 Plus, but it's easy. None of the screws are very hard to get out. They're all the same size. They're all the same shape. So it could be worse. It could be way worse. And that's it for all the screws. Now we can put our SIM card tray back into the phone. Make sure that the SIM card doesn't come loose. That's one of the things I don't like about Samsung, is sometimes as you're sliding that SIM card tray in, the SIM card wants to slide off a little bit. Now, this phone did have a busted back glass in addition to having a broken screen. One of the things I don't like about these back glass is it has this film over the adhesive. And you have to be very careful when removing this film, because sometimes it'll pull the adhesive off with it, which is kind of defeats the purpose. If you're going to have pre-installed adhesive, you don't want it to pull the adhesive off as you're pulling the film off. And I have seen that happen from time to time. Now, once the adhesive is freely exposed to put on your back glass onto the frame of your phone, you want to make sure it's nice and smooth. Don't press too hard. You don't want to break the back glass. And then you turn your phone on to make sure everything's working properly, and that's pretty much it. Now, once we got this phone turned on, the customer's battery was down below 5%, so there's very, very little brightness. You couldn't really see much of anything, and so I went ahead and peeled the film off, charged the phone up off camera, and made sure everything was functioning properly. But that's pretty much it for this Galaxy S20 Plus. It's a pretty straightforward and easy repair. The editing of the video was much tougher. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you get notified for all the videos. I appreciate you guys watching, and y'all take it easy.